All right. Of course, oh, yes, I think I have. I think everything is good. Looks like. Okay, sorry. My camera wasn't working because it was in another program and had an update, but we're all good. I thought I updated it fast enough, but clearly I didn't. But I do want to talk about something I think is really important tonight. And then also let you know kind of what we're going to be doing with the Stop Bully Culture Facebook Lives in the future. One of the things that I think is super, super important, and where I have a little bit different take than most experts on workplace bullying when it comes to dealing with workplace bullying, and in particular, healing. So we have a lot of misconceptions when it comes to healing. Like you have an event, and then, event happens, and then after that event happens comes healing. And my take on healing is that it's segmented throughout your life, depending on what you've been dealing with. And so, for example, if you have had trauma when you were growing up or trauma in your early adulthood, you manage and cope with it in that moment. But then healing often comes a process that happens maybe later. And one of my professors, when I was getting my undergraduate degree, said this to me, and I'll never forget, not because of what he said was profound, but my reaction to it. So Dr. Tate said that healing is, we deal with and heal through each developmental stage. So depending on when you've had your traumatic event or something happens, a loss, a death in the family, a divorce, whatever it is, depending on when that happened to you in your developmental stage, as you progress through the next stages, you'll deal with that event in a different way in that first developmental stage that you get through after that, and then differently as you get to the next one. And I can remember I had a very profound reaction to that. Was like, that was bullshit, that seems stupid, that once you healed from something, it was done, right? I have a scar, I cut my arm, and it, I bleed, I get stitches, I take care of it, and it scars over, and I'm healed. But healing internally is not like our body heals, physically. It's different. It comes in processes and parts, so to speak. It's segmented throughout our lifespan, and it's segmented throughout our developmental stages. And so, of course, now I'm older and wiser. And then when I was in Dr. Tate's classes, I was in my early 20s and knew nothing. I see that he was absolutely right, is that when you have traumatic events happen in your early childhood or in your childhood, you deal with those throughout the course of your life developmentally. When you get to a different developmental stage, you process and deal with it differently. And that's how, again, when it comes to workplace abuse and workplace bullying in particular, that is what I see healing is like. It is segmented, and it's a process. So as you're going through it, so can you heal while you're living through workplace abuse? And again, I think that's a question we all have to answer for ourselves. So I'm certainly not going to be answering that question for you, because that's for you to answer. But I think what we can do are two things. And I think this is super, super important for people living through workplace abuse, be that workplace bullying, be that sexual harassment, racism, or whatever other, abuse you're experiencing under that umbrella of workplace abuse, which is, of course, workplace bullying is one of those. So I think you have to deal with and look at healing like a protective armor. That it's important that you go into work with your, dare I say, your warrior gear on, with your helmet and your shield and your, your armor and your legs and your boots and your gloves, so that when bullying happens, and this is where healing healing can help build your armor is that when a bully or an aggressor or an abuser in the workplace says to you, you know, Jan, you're a troublemaker, you're a real piece of work, lady, and that comes at me repeatedly throughout the week, it hits my armor and it drops off. And being able to have protected armor, aka healing armor, when you're experiencing workplace abuse, helps reduce the impact and the long-term effects of workplace bullying. Because one of the things that I think is detrimental when it comes to gaslighting, psychological abuse, and emotional trauma from being abused in the workplace is that oftentimes you don't even notice the subtle attacks or wearing on your self-confidence and self-worth until you get out of that workplace environment, because that becomes normalized. And it's a little bit like when you think of emotional abuse and psychological warfare that bullies play on the people they're going after. It's not that you believe that you're a troublemaker, but that some of what they're saying seeps into who you are. It's like, you know, I can, you know, when you eat something, okay, right, you eventually, for myself being a diabetic, I have to take insulin to counteract what I'm eating. And so if I don't take my insulin or I don't take enough of it, eventually my blood sugar rises. And that's a little bit how we can prepare ourselves, you know, and deal with workplace abuse. But if we're not consciously building up our armor, then it seeps through and we may not even recognize it. So I don't even recognize when my blood sugar is high unless I check my blood sugar. And then I'm like, oh, well, I guess that sandwich that I ate at lunch did raise my blood sugar more than I thought. And that's what happens when you're constantly being belittled and you're the outsider in your workplace. It takes a toll on you, and that's what I think healing does, is it helps strengthen your armor and it protects you from long-term trauma and the wear of long-term workplace abuse has on your sense of self and who you are. And again, the other thing I want to remind you too is that this, you know, workplace bullying is different than other types of abuse, oftentimes because you have almost always you have most of the organization who sees you as the problem and is mistreating you either overtly or covertly. And being that isolated person, the one being bullied, the one being abused, it's very, very difficult and it's very problematic. So if you're in that workplace environment, it's so important that you make sure that your sense of self is really solid, and that, you know, when it's important to acknowledge the hurt that's being happening to you, and then being able to say, okay, yes, this is happening. I have my armor on, so when I go in, again, when I have my warrior uniform on, I go into the work environment, I'm protecting myself, because what happens is they come at me, it hits me, and it drops, versus seeping into my identity and who I am as a person. And so, of course, you know that I wrote a book called Living Through Workplace Bullying. And why I wrote Living Through Workplace Bullying is because it really is two things. It's a lifelong process. Yes, I've been out of workplace bullying for 5 years, but I can still feel sometimes the rage, the hurt, the pain, how it really has shaped my identity. And again, I'm going to continue to live through workplace bullying as I continue to heal. And when something else might comes up, then I can deal with that. The other thing is, though, you might be actually still in that work environment and in that workplace. And that's a point where it's so important that who you are, that you're dealing with that, not like me in the past, right? So that you're dealing with it and you're being proactive rather than like me now, I'm dealing with it after the fact. And so you can prepare yourself and I think connect with someone, other people, or even just getting this book because it's 30 days, easy read, it's short, and you can get an email supplement that, you know, an email will come to you directly. And what I think is so important about the Living Through Workplace Bullying is that it's something you can do to prepare yourself that doesn't take a lot of time, because one of the things that I know you don't have is a lot of time to spend and talk about what's happening to you. I also think that one of the things that's so beneficial about having something to help you is that sometimes what we do is we just bury things and we bury things and we bury things and we don't deal with what's happening. And so that's why it's so important to heal and also prepare yourself just to walk through the day. So I am going to have to kind of cut this short. There's somebody like banging on my door, and so I don't know what that's about. But I want to talk about two things. Please make sure you go get the Living Through Workplace Bullying, because that's something that you can do today. You can have it tomorrow, get those emails to come to you. And also is that if you're dealing with workplace bullying and you feel like you need something more than a supplement or a short book to help you, is you can always reach out to me. I do coaching with clients to help them heal. If you're dealing with, you're going to have to report or do those things that oftentimes increase our the retaliation and the abuse, I can also help you with any of that. Because one of the things I think is so important, as I continue on this journey living through workplace abuse, is that the more I get out and I talk and I speak, the more I know that this is still a significant issue, and it's on the rise. And the resources and the real help for people is, slim to none. We're not teaching our mental health professionals to deal with workplace abuse or anything like that. And the other thing before I get out of here is I want to say thank you for being here. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. And then I'm going to rethink Stop Bully Culture Live, so I'm not going to do it next week because it's July 4th here in the U.S., but I'm going to get back and figure out when I want to do it. If you have topics you want to hear, just go ahead and let me know. All right, thank you so much, and I will see you in a couple weeks.